Well, y'all, I'm just out here having some random brush cutting thoughts. And they're thoughts that I feel like should be obvious to everybody, but that a lot of people actually really could use hearing again. And it is pretty simple, okay? If you're married and your spouse has a healthy desire for physical intimacy and they only want to take it out on you, that is not a bad thing, okay? If you're married and your spouse wants to spend quality time with you and share in a conjoined life experience with you, that is not a bad thing. And if you have those things in a spouse, that's a blessing. And if you see those things as putting you out, you really need to take another look at your lack of gratitude and your perspective, because it's something that a lot of people fall into. Okay? You really got to take a look at the perspective. Now, if sometimes people are having health problems and they're having severe hormonal imbalances and endocrine disruptor balances and sometimes things like undiagnosed infectious disease, and that can make, someone else's desire for time or intimacy seem very burdensome, and you need to acknowledge that you have a medical problem that needs resolved. Okay? Even so, a lot of people, not just men, but also women, would benefit from things like maca root, which is a natural hormonal adaptogen, okay, for both males and females. That will help normalize and regulate your hormonal levels. Okay, things like getting your iodine levels up, making sure that you're not dealing with severe glutathione insufficiency, because the thing is even if you have an extremely difficult to diagnose infectious disease, what that disease is going to do is it's going to release all sorts of endotoxins and exotoxins that are going to have an especially negative impact on you if you have what's called an MTHFR genetic mutation, which is about 30% of the population. So illnesses can obviously still cause problems for people that do not have that genetic mutation, but it is going to have an outsized impact on those people. Okay, sometimes people can have an infectious disease that's negatively impacting their health that they just can't get a diagnosis on. It can be sometimes even things like Lyme disease. They hang out in the system, somewhat latent, and then they can get reactivated by things like childbirth, surgery, car accidents, other infections. For example, the recent thing that has kind of entered the system, okay, that I have a Medium post about, that can reactivate a lot of other infections like latent Epstein-Barr virus, which most people have that latent in their system. Okay, so you can get this other infection, and that infection goes away, but now you're stuck with undiagnosed Epstein-Barr virus that's not getting treated. Okay, and it can even lead to organ failure eventually if left untreated, and it's not manifesting with typical symptoms. So sometimes when things are not going right in your marriage, there's a legitimate physiological health problem that people need to work together to take a look at and resolve. Bartonella is another one. Okay, it can have symptoms such as restless leg syndrome, foot fevers, very tender feet upon awakening, just out of the blue bouts of despair or rage, okay, or constant grumpiness. Okay, looks like you're walking through the world with blue tinted glasses, almost is kind of the experience. Can cause severe despair and anger, and make somebody very easy to trigger. Okay, it's like a marriage killer. And unfortunately it does eventually lead a lot of people to self-dispatch because it gets misdiagnosed and mistreated, and they're getting other pharmaceuticals that are not treating the underlying infection. But again, all of those infections, they're releasing toxins that are depleting your glutathione levels. Okay, so getting that up is one thing that can help. Maca root for the hormones. Okay, getting your iodine levels up, things like that. Okay, but if whether or not there's a medical issue, unresolved medical issue involved, if you have a spouse that wants to have physical intimacy with you or who wants to spend quality time with you, that is what's called a blessing. Okay? That shouldn't be looked at as some terrible burden. So I just hope some people will take another look at that and understand that when you have a spouse who wants to have physical intimacy with you or who wants to just spend quality time with you and you're constantly rebuffing them and not making the time for them, a lot of people will interpret that as an expression of a lack of love, a lack of consideration, a lack of care, and it can be very heartbreaking for people. Okay, so people end up in these marriages where one or both parties are just constantly breaking the other person's heart and making them feel extremely unloved, and it causes a lot of issues, and the person never really comes out and expresses, because they might not even want to admit it to themselves, how unloved that they feel. Okay, so another thing is that a lot of men don't understand is that, sometimes when women leave a man, the men will try to say, anytime somebody leaves the other person, somebody will try to say, oh, well, that person didn't love me or X, Y, Z, ABC. But sometimes what happens is somebody leaves because they love somebody so much and that person just breaks their heart over and over every single day. And it just tears them up and they can't cope with it anymore. Okay? So just take a look at things. If you're somebody that has a spouse that wants to spend quality time with you and you're looking at it as a burden, understand that there are much worse things in the world, okay? Because people are supposed to be able to partner in marriage and share in a life together. So I'm wishing you all well, okay? Sorry, that truck was a little bit loud, but I just want to reiterate that, when a man leads a woman with love and protection, that is a form of submission, okay? And for a woman who's being led that way within her marriage to then follow her man with respect is a form of mutual submission. It's like a dance. Okay, so just because you think somebody should feel loved and protected or they should feel respected doesn't necessarily mean that that's the case. And sometimes people need to be able to learn how to have difficult conversations and check-ins with each other to see where they're actually at on things and what they actually need, okay, to feel like secure and good in the relationship. And collaborate together, like actually proactively collaborate, and don't just wait until some sort of shit hits the fan to check in with each other, okay? It's like you see the marriage failure rate today and all the broken families, and it takes a lot of work and it takes a willingness of both parties to be willing to work on it. It does. It takes two to maintain a marriage. It's not always easy. So I'm wishing you all well. I'm going to get back to my post-hammering, okay? But I think a lot of people, they don't ever go through the effort of developing any gratitude. And their perspectives are all skewed and perverse and twisted, okay? So just check in with yourselves, check in with each other,